Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I'm Mark Givler, joined as always by Chip Minnick. We're here to recap another weekend in the Big Ten. We'll talk about a few of the games. We've got some other things we kind of want to talk about, like the apparent national bias against the Big Ten right now. But we'll get into that in a minute. Game of the weekend was Washington, Illinois. I think that was probably the headliner. Washington played extraordinarily well, especially offensively, and was able to handle business and get the win over Illinois. I guess the first question now, Chip, is was that really an elimination game? Like, is Illinois out with their third loss now?
I'm gonna have to kind of waver and just say to be determined, because it looks like when you take a glance at the remainder of Illinois' schedule that they can run the table. I'm not saying that they definitely will, because we predicted Illinois to defeat Washington, and that didn't happen. But if Illinois went 9-3 down the stretch, who's to say? I mean, like it's like there's no definitive criteria. I would think that right now I'd probably have to say that they probably would be on the outside looking in, but who knows?
Yeah, I think obviously it's I don't want to say it's a complete elimination, but they've got a real uphill battle now. Again, I continue to think there's going to be a 9-3 team in this field somehow, some way. All these teams beating up on each other all over the country. Obviously, Illinois got to win out, get to 9-3, and then you're hoping, if you're Illinois at that point, that USC continues to win, but maybe not win to the point where they go 10-2. Maybe win to the point. Good Lord. I'm going to have to edit that out. All right. So bad. You're going to want USC to continue to win, but probably drop maybe the Oregon game at the end of the year or something, and USC go 9-3, because then USC be 9-3, probably in the top 20-ish at that point, and you'd have that win in your back pocket, because otherwise you're looking at Illinois. They kind of, I don't know if they lost the wrong games, but they lost like to 3 of the 4 best teams on their schedule, which is good because there's no like loss on their schedule that you look at and like, how did they lose to that team? But they also, it prevented them from getting a lot of quality wins because their overall schedule isn't particularly strong within the Big Ten. So yeah, they're in a tough spot now. But I wouldn't say totally out. But again, I think a tough spot. As far as the other end of the Big Ten, the Purdue Rutgers, that was kind of the other end of the whole deal. How Purdue, man, just another heartbreaker. Rutgers gets their first Big Ten win. We talked about this earlier, like how many times can Purdue keep coming close before they kind of like not give up, but before it just becomes a little bit too much to overcome that mental hurdle? Or are we at that point now with Purdue?
We might be. We very well might be. I mean, I know we're rapidly approaching Halloween. And I realize this is just a clumsy thing, but like the idea of, okay, somebody just ripping out, somebody's heart, in very grotesque terms, it was watching it. It was the kind of thing where credit to Rutgers for battling back. They were, able to tie it up, and then, Purdue, they're trying to get into field goal range to avoid overtime. Ryan Brown, who I didn't think was going to play, but he did, drops back to pass, fires a ball, gets batted up in the air, catches it. And then as soon as he catches it, he's tackled and fumbles it. Rutgers recovers, kicks the field goal on the last play. I mean, you couldn't script a worse horror, movie for a football game. But yeah, I think it's going to be one of these things where Rutgers, because now they're going to be playing Ohio State in the near future. I mean, they've got Indiana, so it's like, okay, the real tough teams, not to imply that they haven't played tough teams before, but they've got some juggernauts coming, at the end of the season. So yeah, I definitely think Purdue, they might just be kind of just saying, like, let's just get this season over and try and regroup for 2026.
Yeah. And then somewhere in there, Nebraska saved their season. That was, they had a nice little lead against Northwestern. They blew that lead and let Northwestern come back and tie. Dylan Raiola leads a game-winning touchdown drive. Now Nebraska's sitting there at 6-2 thinking, hey, if we win out, who knows? First of all, just your thoughts on that game. You said you watched a lot of kind of the end of that game and just the drive Raiola put together. And could this be a confidence-building moment for Raiola and just the whole Nebraska program, just that because they've lost some of these types of games over the years, and now they go down and they win one after letting Northwestern back in the game.
Yeah, I definitely think it's certainly that can be a confidence builder. When you look at this coming weekend, and I know we'll talk about it later more in greater detail later on this week with USC. But they've got games on the road at UCLA, at Penn State, versus Iowa. I think that's the kind of thing where, all right, they know that they can find themselves in adverse situations and not necessarily fold up their tent. I think Matt Rule is kind of trying to instill in his team, that, hey, we can come back. Now, I think you raised a very good point that Nebraska nearly blew this because they did have a lead on Northwestern, allowed them back in the game. But I think with Raiola, his maturity, his progression as a leader on the field, as a quarterback, I definitely think it was something that Nebraska can build upon.
And so that leads me into kind of what we want to talk about a little bit today, which is the Big Ten now has a 6-2 Nebraska, a 6-2 Iowa, and a 6-2 Washington, all unranked, while every SEC team with a pulse seems to be in the top 20, and every other team from every other 6-2, 7-1 type team from other leagues is up there. Nebraska beat Cincinnati. That's Cincinnati's only loss. Cincinnati's number 17. I don't know what Washington has to do to get ranked at this point. And then you got Iowa there at 6-2 with like a 4-point loss to Indiana and a last-second field goal loss at Iowa State. What are we doing here? How are all three of these teams should be ranked? What is going on?
Yeah, I think out of everybody, I think Iowa certainly has, certainly a viable reason to, I'd say gripe about not being ranked, because when you look at the fact that, okay, they lost on a last-second field goal to Iowa State, and they played Indiana tougher than just about anybody. So the fact that, so Iowa, now granted, remains to be seen, how they finish up the season, in terms of will they be able to qualify for the college football playoff. I realize it sounds like a broken record, but we'll see how everything plays out. Washington, same thing. I think Washington, they played extremely well this past weekend against Illinois. They've got some challenging games down the remainder of their schedule, but Washington, I think, certainly should be ranked. If anything, the SEC bias that Big Ten fans scream about when you look at the teams that are ranked and the Big Ten teams that are not, it's not just paranoia.
No, and they start these teams off so high. And someone put a graphic on Twitter the other day and it was like all these SEC teams in the preseason top 25, and they like crossed out like 5 of them that had all kind of, collapsed. And look, I enjoy the SEC. I watch a lot of games from the league. It's just not the juggernaut it was 5 to 10 years ago. It's just not. It's got, I would say, a lot of solid teams this year. There's no team in the SEC that should scare anybody in a playoff scenario. I think it's going to be another year where the Big Ten wins the national championship. I'm not I'm not seeing this like dominant force of the SEC. And there's some good stories there. Vanderbilt's a really cool story. If Northwestern was doing that in the Big Ten, everyone would be talking about how bad the Big Ten is. But since it's the SEC, no one's really questioning it. It's just how amazing Diego Pavia is, who will probably never play a snap in the NFL. Like, it's mind-blowing, the narrative surrounding the SEC versus the lack of, whatever it is, the lack of enthusiasm or whatever is around a program or a team like Iowa or a team like Washington, who should clearly be right. There is like zero chance Virginia would be favored on a neutral field against any of those three teams.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I think Virginia. I mean,
what are they this week? They're like 15 or 16 or something ridiculous. We saw Cincinnati play Nebraska on a neutral field. They lost. So, and I think Nebraska is the third best of those three. I think Washington and Iowa are ahead of Nebraska in my own pecking order. But we know that Nebraska is better than Cincinnati. That happened on a neutral field. It's Cincinnati's only loss. And I'll probably change. Cincinnati probably won't run the table in the Big 12. But you're talking about snapshots of where things are right now. And we're just ignoring results, wins, losses, games against the like Virginia's living off the Florida State win, which doesn't matter anymore. LSU was living off the Clemson win for weeks and weeks and weeks. Are we still going to sit here and talk about LSU as a top 15 team? They just fired their coach. They're going to lose 5 or 6 games this year. Like, these aren't good teams. Like, these aren't great teams. They're average to solid teams. And they're all getting the benefit of the doubt there. And again, Iowa's blind resume is actually really good. Their quality of wins great? Maybe not, but like, you look at them as a 6-2 team who played Indiana more competitively than Oregon, who's like number 6. And you look at an early loss to Iowa State where they kind of threw the game away and gave up that last second field goal. Like, this is a team that's 2 minutes of football away from being 8-0. And they have solid. Their losses aren't bad. And then you've got teams, up there. You got Alabama's, number 4, whatever they are now, with 3, whatever they are, with a loss to Florida State where they were soundly dominated. And so do resumes matter? Like, I don't get how we're seeing this constant thing. Like, now, like they don't fall. And like Oklahoma and Tennessee are going to play this week. And one of them's going to lose, and one of them's going to be 6-3 and probably drop from like 17 to 22. And we're not like, it's just not, they're not going to drop these teams, and they're not going to put the teams ahead of them. I've been watching the SEC. Nobody in that league plays defense this year. I don't know when the SEC turned into like the old Pac-12, but nobody plays defense in the SEC. The only team that plays defense in the SEC this year is Oklahoma, and they have no offense. I don't understand it. And you would think after back-to-back national championships out of the Big Ten and the way the Big Ten manhandled everybody in the playoff last year, that you would start to see things shift and give the Big Ten more of a benefit of the doubt. But it's not happening. And I'm just thank goodness these polls don't mean anything anymore. That's
right.
I'm very, very curious when the first college football playoff rankings come out to see how much they mirror the polls, to see kind of, okay, how competent is this committee this year? Because there are just things that don't make any sense about the rankings right now.
That was going to be the words of consolation, that, the college football playoff committee, when they come out, that basically, like, that's your ranking system. And I always, one of my best friends who just becomes apoplectic at, okay, well, you're not, like, you're not number 1, like you're number 5 or whatever. And it's like, okay, I have to remind him, hey, all you want to be is you want to be in the top 12. And I realize, don't get me wrong, I would love for, as an Ohio State fan or as a fan of the Big Ten, to have as many teams that are higher ranked, so they get the home game in the playoff or the bye. But what it all comes down to is, okay, all you want is your shot at the title and making the most of it when you get that opportunity. So that's what I'm kind of holding out, is that you said this before on previous episodes, that these teams are going to beat each other up. And I think when it turns into kind of like the blind taste test, so to speak, being able to look and see, all right, this team, who did they beat? Who'd they play that was ranked, etc. Then we're going to see, I think, a complete reorganization. That's just maybe I'm naive, but that's what I'm thinking is going to happen.
Well, it's just the whole thing with the preseason polls that they overrate all these SEC teams. And then when they play each other, it's like, oh, they're just top 10 teams playing each other. And then they don't penalize the loser because it was just a top 10 game. And it's like, LSU's not a top 10 team.
Right.
Oklahoma's not a top 10 team. Texas right now doesn't look like a top 10 team by any stretch of the imagination. My goodness, are they lucky to only have the second one? Like, does Georgia look – I've watched Georgia a few times this year, and I think they're good. I think they're good enough to get into the semifinal even, because I don't think there's a lot of great teams in college football this year. But I don't see the dudes on those that we are used to seeing on Georgia.
Right.
Like, where is the Brock Bowers, the Nolan Smiths, the Michael Williams, just these athletic Marvel freak shows running around the field where, like, who is that guy? I don't see that on that team. I don't see a lot of it. Florida got the benefit of the doubt for forever. They're bad. Like, what? I don't see this just freakish level of talent out of these top SEC teams that I'm used to seeing. And when you pair that with recent results, I don't know what I'm missing. And I don't know. I'm not as optimistic as you that the playoff committee is going to see it that way. And I don't know. I don't know.
No, I understand. Like I said, I mean, that's why, like head to head, when the games come to pass, that's where you have to seize the day, so to speak. You have to make the most of those opportunities. Like right now, it looks like Ohio State and Indiana are on a collision course for not only for the Big Ten championship, but whoever wins that for probably being the number one overall seed going into the college football playoff. I'm skeptical about Texas A&M being able to run the table in the SEC. You just referenced Texas. It wouldn't be completely shocking if Texas were to beat them in their rivalry game. When we talk about Alabama, I'm not completely sold on them. I do believe that they
skin of their teeth on Saturday. I watched a lot of the game. That was that was pretty darn lucky for them to win that game.
But like it would not. Last year it was. I'll just say that in terms of a rivalry game, I realized not in the SEC, but just a rivalry game, Georgia was lucky to beat Georgia Tech. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it this year. So, that's why, I'm just kind of thinking like the results, you've said this before. I think the results as the calendar flips towards November, I think we're going to start to see more and more upheaval within the different conferences. And I think that that's going to be reflected within the college football playoff rankings.
Yeah. I hope you're right. No, Alabama took unless I'm reading the wrong things, watching the wrong things. Alabama took no flack for Saturday's performance. South Carolina is 3-5 now? Not a good team.
Yes.
Where is if Ohio State or Indiana played, or Oregon played Rutgers that way, they'd probably drop.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oregon,
Big Ten and
Oregon's taking flack for not being as impressive.
For being up 24-0 on Wisconsin in the fourth quarter.
They're not getting any praise, but you raise a really good point.
Well. They played like crap, but they won by. That game was never in doubt, and they won by multiple touchdowns.
Exactly.
And I just I don't get it. I think it's going to play out in the playoffs where the Big Ten, if there's Big Ten SEC matchups, I think there's a very good chance we're going to see what happened last year, where the teams in the North end up putting it on the teams from the South. And at that point, I wonder, okay, so now next year, what happens? Are we going to keep doing this over and over again? Or are we eventually going to start giving the Big Ten the benefit of the doubt the SEC was getting for years?
Yep.
Because I look at the national championship contenders. I think three of them I think the Big Ten's got three. I think there's like 6 teams that can win the championship this year. I think the Big Ten's got 3 of them. And I think one of the other 3 is actually Notre Dame.
I was going to say, I was hoping you were going to say, because I think Notre Dame is definitely
4 out of 6 of the teams are like Big
Midwest.
Ten or Northern teams. And then I think Georgia could Alabama, maybe, I guess. But that's about it. I don't think Miami can. I definitely don't think Georgia Tech can, although Brent Key's doing an amazing job there. I don't think anyone else from the SEC. I really don't think Ole Miss can.
I think eventually all of the flirtation that Lane Kiffin is having with other jobs is going to start to manifest. It's going to manifest with them getting tripped up, and he can try to, like, my focus is on Ole Miss. I'm just kind of paraphrasing in terms of like how I just think the chatter and the speculation, especially now that LSU is open in addition to Florida, I just think it's gonna start to become louder and louder and more difficult to keep the focus on the
field. He's not going to come out and stifle it either.
Right.
Because he's either going to take one of those jobs in a huge payday, or Ole Miss is going to have to pay up. So it behooves him to let this continue
until it hurts.
Behind the scenes fueling it. So but I just I even look like Tennessee, and I'm like, if Tennessee beats Oklahoma, now I don't know. Tennessee's still got some hurdles. Like, they got to play Vanderbilt. This isn't like a play-in game on Saturday when they play Oklahoma, but if Tennessee beats Oklahoma and somehow gets into this playoff, they're going to have happen to them what happened. Like, their team this year is not as good as their team was last year.
I know,
because they play except not the Ohio State game they didn't, but they generally play defense. They don't play defense this year. Their defense is terrible. They are going to run into an Oregon or an Indiana or an Ohio State again, and they're going to get housed if that happens. But I think the worst thing for the SEC, I think the SEC probably thinks, we should get 4 or 5 teams, and let's get 5, and it'll be great for the league. I don't think that would be as good for the league as they think it would be, because I think the bottom 2 or 3 in that scenario are going to get wiped out by teams from the Big Ten or Notre Dame or even a Miami, and it's going to be a bad look. I think if you're the SEC, it's like, okay, Alabama and Georgia, you can go in, and then let's, A&M, and then, I don't know. I don't know if I want anyone else in at this point. But we'll see. It'll be fascinating. I guess the good thing about this is look at all these teams that still have a chance.
That's right.
All these games that matter, that didn't matter for like 99.9% of college football history that we're going to be talking about this weekend. So, wow. This was kind of a ranty episode. There was awful state of games in the Big Ten this week, and I just can't believe these 6-2 Big Ten teams are unranked while we see Cincinnati at 17 and Virginia in the top 20. And
Virginia that needed,
did they keep Missouri in the top 25?
Yes.
No quarterback now. Like, their quarterback's probably out for the year.
Yeah, Probula's out. Yeah. So it's all gonna shake out.
Goodness.
And I just think, Virginia, they survived. It was an outstretched effort by a North Carolina receiver, reaching for the pylon and just came up, inches short. So Virginia's living on borrowed time.
And moved up a spot or 2.
Well, that's where, like you said, thank goodness that these don't count. And I think when the College Football Playoff Committee, I I'm not necessarily saying that I think that their logic is completely, unflinching and, completely accurate. But I do believe that once you start to do kind of like, as I refer to it, like the blind taste test, that will have some, as well as the results on the field. I think there's going to be some, like a reshuffling of the deck.
Yeah. Well, we will be back here on Thursday with our weekend preview. Some interesting games, of course. Penn State, Ohio State, maybe not as interesting on paper as it was when the season started, but there's still the Jim Knowles returns to Columbus factor. So we will talk plenty about that. We'll get into some of the other games as well, of course. Talk a little playoff picture type stuff. See, which games kind of have playoff implications and which don't. But Chip, any parting thoughts from the weekend? Michigan State did give Michigan a more competitive game than I thought they would. I don't know if that helps Jonathan Smith at all, but
I can only hope that the fans, like that they recognize. I mean, because there were some very bad calls that went against Michigan State. Now, we predicted Michigan to win that game, but yeah, Michigan State, I think they would be. I really do. I think you'd be going back to square one if they pull the plug. I mean, we'll see. And I also believe something that you said is that, do you really want to be, now that, I mean, all these jobs that are open, that it's like, hey, this is not necessarily, you don't want to be, jostling for position against all these other schools. No disrespect to Michigan State. They're not going to be, trying to, break the bank like an LSU. I guess Penn State will, Florida. But all these other schools like Arkansas is open. It's like, do you really want to be, trying to, fight for, like against like UCLA for, all these other assistants or coaches? I just think if I'm Michigan State, stay the course.
Give them another year. Do not get out there. 3 of the top 10 jobs in college football are open right now. Do not go out there. Like, if we look at the top 10 jobs in college football, most of them are secured right now, except for the 3 that are open. Like, there's not a lot of guys who are on the hot seat right now at the top 10 jobs in college football. Like, the schools that had guys on the hot seat, they've already opened their jobs. So what that means is next year, it's unlikely we're going to see 3 of the top 10 jobs in college football open, unless people get some of these coaches get NFL happy. The Sarkisian rumors are out there, which he shot down. So who knows? But, it's going to be, there's always going to be coaches fired, especially in today's climate. There's going to be a lot of coaches fired constantly. But like, what if North Carolina comes open too? Like North Carolina is considered a better job than Michigan State. North Carolina is considered a sleeping giant. And I tend to agree with that. So like, you're going to be fighting against like maybe North Carolina, maybe Wisconsin, Arkansas, UCLA. Does Maryland come open? Like, you're going to be fighting. You're going to be swimming upstream for the scraps that LSU, Florida, and Penn State leave you.
Yeah.
I don't like that position. I don't like that position for them. I think you tell Jonathan Smith to fix his damn defense this winter and put a better defense out on the field next year. Do what you got to do to retain your offensive talent and give it a shot next year. And then if you come out next year and it's 5-7 or 6, it's just ugly, then okay. Like, you gave it 3 years, whatever. But I think this would be a mistake. I agree with you. So we'll see. We'll see how they finish. They got to finish with a couple wins. They got to they got to give the people something here down the stretch.
Yeah.
Finish with a couple wins, but yep. So we will see. Again, we'll be back Thursday. Thank you everyone for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again here in a couple days.